Welcome to the podcast series on technology and innovation in coaching, brought to you by the Association for Coaching, the world's leading independent body. I am Claudia, coach and entrepreneur and founder of eHuddle. In this AC podcast series, we are privileged to talk to coaches, academics, and entrepreneurs who will be sharing with us some of their research, findings, and experiences related to technologies that could help us democratize coaching, elevate the coaching practice, lower cost, or save time, among other benefits. This is a very broad topic, going from how technologies can support a coach or carry out a coaching process. We hope this series brings technology closer to coaches. Enjoy listening. Welcome to Alexander Caillet, an organizational psychologist, consultant, coach, and lecturer at Georgetown University on team coaching, CEO and founder of the team development firm Corentus. Also joining us is Kimberley Parsons, Chief Solution Officer at Corentus. Kimberley is a team coach, executive coach, and master facilitator, also lecturer at Georgetown University. I will let you tell the listeners more about yourselves.
Thank you, Claudia. It's a pleasure to be here, and we're looking forward to this podcast. I think you covered the principal areas. Born and raised in France, I came to the United States as an immigrant when I was younger, and have spent my life traveling incessantly around the world. As founder of Corentus, the idea behind Corentus was to create an organization that was focused specifically on team development from beginning to end, and to do so by using a variety of modalities, the principal which of one is team coaching, that we're going to talk about today. So looking forward to being here.
Yeah, great. So thank you, Claudia, for the invitation to be here. So I'm Kimberley Parsons, and I've been in this work of team coaching, team effectiveness, helping leaders and teams just perform more effectively for about 12 years or so, and really launching this work after attending Georgetown's leadership coaching certification and becoming really interested in what we like to call the X Games of coaching, which is team coaching, and really being able to have an impact deeply and far within the systems of organizations. So I live in Richmond, Virginia, and joined Corentus about two and a half years ago. So have been partnered to live my dream job every day with Alexander and others at Corentus.
Amazing. Thank you for that. And thank you for taking the time today. As you mentioned, we will be going a bit deeper into team coaching. You both work with teams in many ways, doing team facilitation training, team building, consulting, and team coaching. But you recently spoke with about 10 full-time coaches in your network about the impact of the virtual environment and the pandemic on team coaching. What are some of the findings that you have in regards to teams?
Yeah, so maybe we can start with this notion of, and I think you said it pretty nicely, Claudia, the different ways that we intervene with teams. So we look at an umbrella called team development, under which we see team coaching, team facilitation, team building, team training. And the one thing that we've noticed very clearly over the past few years since we've gone into the pandemic and the virtual environment is now the new environment, is that we're tending to do less team coaching and much more team facilitation and team training. It seems to be the request of our clients. So that's one of the major findings we have found so far. And within the context of team coaching, when we do it in the virtual environment, we're finding some major changes there too, in terms of how we actually are able to gather data in real time and actually do what we call making moves or intervening. And that's something I'm looking forward to exploring with you later in this podcast.
Great. So I guess there's two parts to it. One of them would be how teams are functioning, and then how that has impacted the team coaching. So which one do you want to start with?
We can start with perhaps how teams are functioning.
Great.
So in terms of how teams are functioning, we found a couple of things that are pretty consistent across all the teams we've worked with, and that are pretty consistent in the way that the team coaches we interviewed are speaking about their experience with teams. The first is that, interestingly, a number of teams quickly dropped into the virtual environment and were able to adapt to the sources of technology that were offered to them and this need to be now in a virtual space. That transition happened fairly quickly, and we believe it's because there was a sense of common purpose and shared goal to drop in, to figure it out, and to be able to react quickly to this changing environments. That's one thing we noticed. A second thing we noticed about teams is that they seem to be operating less like teams and more like working groups. Because the virtual environment, at least at first, didn't offer up the collaborative workspaces that are traditional to teams, the work seemed to be much more oriented towards group work, which was information sharing and brainstorming, versus real problem solving and work product creation. And a third finding we found is that many of the teams, because the informal touch points that were available to them in regular organizational life were missing, Claudia, because those informal touch points provided a lot of the operational and task activities they could do on a day-to-day basis, they tend to load up their agendas virtually with task and operational items, which means a lot of the strategic and visionary work was cast aside for very filled agendas that were multiplying throughout the day and focused primarily, again, on task and operations.
So, Alexander, if I may, just one thing I'll add to that also that's related is one of the things that we have seen with this shift to virtual is really more of that focus on task and less on relationships in terms of being in a state of prolonged forming because people haven't come together. So it's more like we come together, we do our work and more like this group mode, and then we go off. So like that deepness, that depth of really forming together as a team has been prolonged. And also, I would say less storming is what we're seeing in teams as well, because we come together, we have this short amount of time, we're going to really focus on the work and not really taking that time to get into all of the relationship dynamics that happen as a team goes through the development stages of forming and then storming. So really more of this focus on let's get the work done, let's focus on task, and less time to really get into the relationship aspects that happen that is a part of teams doing their work.
Great. Now that we have explored, what has happened with the teams, as a coach, what have you guys done about it?
That's a great question. So the first thing that we've done about it is to orient our work towards the immediate need, which is the facilitation of these virtual environment conversations and the training required to operate in the virtual environment. So we're noticing as team coaches, when you look at the modalities we talked about, our orientation is facilitation, help them manage their conversations, drive their agendas forward, make sure they're getting all their points across, and make sure the conversations are interactive. And then training on team tools, virtual tools, problem-solving tools, and conversational tools. We also find ourselves teaching quite a bit on how to do the above. So think of us as moving away from that in-the-moment coaching, which we'll talk about, more towards being more actively involved and more participative in the way we're intervening.
Yeah, and the other thing that I would add there, just on the relationship side of that, right? So doing less intervening in real time related to relationships because there is less space to do it, and being more prescribed and methodical about almost putting the relationship aspect in a box, right? So we say, this is the time that we will work on relationships. And then this is the time of our engagement that we're really going to focus on the work. So I've seen that shift as well, because oftentimes we're coming into, hour and a half, 2 hour Zoom meetings where the team, again, is really focused on, let's get through this chunk of work that we need to do. So that has caused us to really separate out working on the cohesion of relationship side.
So a very fragmented type of approach where you're first dealing with one thing and then being the task in hand and how they go about the task. And then a completely different arena would be the relationship and the forming and the way they form their norms and how they interact as a team.
Yeah, having to almost schedule the time, right? So whereas before in team coaching, like I feel like I was more integrated in the types of moves, the types of things that we would coach around with the team. So yeah.
Yeah, when it comes to tasks, just to build on what Kimberly said, there's quite a bit to learn in the new environment, Claudia. How do you set the proper goals? How do you organize and plan your work? How do you make clear decisions? How do you manage meetings in this virtual environment? that alone requires a complete shift in the way of working. And because the agendas are loaded and it's really information sharing and brainstorming intensive, those types of task activities require much attention. It's also interesting to note that when we're in person versus virtual, the in-person nature of meeting together allows us a lot more information about each other, somatic information, emotional information, micro expressions, and being together. And that type of information facilitates relationship work. In the virtual environment, it's just not there or not as much. And what we're noticing, again, to build on what Kimberly said, is that there almost seems to be a moving away from some of those relationship aspects like conflict management or building deeper trust or making sure that we're all engaged together or really giving ourselves a true voice to what it is we truly want to say. Whereas in an in-person environment, that might be more facilitated or it might be easier to do so. Sorry.
Yeah. And Claudia, can I give you an example?
That would be amazing.
Yeah, so just by way of example, to illustrate what we're talking about. So a lot of the past year and a half, 2 years has been about contracting with us, coming in to partner with our clients to really focus on, the things that Alexander is talking about. How do we make decisions in this environment? Because it looks different now. It feels different now, right? How do we hold one another accountable to the work and get that out? How do we be more strategic? And now what I'm noticing is that now that we're shifting to more organizations are coming back in person, like all of our, I'm not going to say all, but several of our requests, right, are now, hey, can you come and do like this forming activity with us? Can you come in and help us to like go deeper with getting to know each other? So it was almost like this segment, if you will, of we're just going to focus on the work, heads down, come in and help us do the work better. And now that things are starting to open up, it's like, yeah, we want to spend like 2 days doing team building. I'm like, 2 days, really? But we're starting to see that shift.
So a bit more of that compartmentalization of the work you're doing. So if we had to divide it into sections, would it be then the relationship, the tasks, and what else would you include there?
Good question. I think those are the two basic areas, Claudia. There's relationship tasks. There may also be an area called technology, which is really how we're helping organizations understand how to use the technology efficiently. And we have plenty of examples of new technology which are facilitating teamwork. And that's another area where we're intervening quite a bit as well. The technologies that are available to teams virtually to actually collaborate in real time and make their meetings more masterful. And we have found ourselves in the position of helping clients understand that technology and use that technology to their advantage, right? So it's part and parcel now of what we're doing. And it's almost using the technology to actually do the teaching and the training and the facilitation. So those are combined. I would add that third one.
Great. So that brings us very nicely into our theme of the podcast, which is technology. And I guess then there's two sides of it. One would be, how does technology help the teams, but also how does technology help the coaches? And so it would be great if you can go a bit more into detail about that.
One of my favorite ways that I'm seeing actually is providing more equity of voice, if you will, for people on the team. And that's because of the chat feature. Like the chat box has like opened up so much more for people to engage, people to get their voices out in the room. We have noticed in team coaching virtually that there may be whole conversation threads that are happening in the chat box while we're coaching. And from a coaching perspective, we have to make those choice points, right? Do we follow the conversation that's happening out loud? Do we follow the conversation that's happening in the chat box? When does it become so overwhelming in the chat box that as a coach, we have to pick and choose like where we're going to put our attention? But in terms of helping the team, I think from a technology perspective, like the chat has really opened up the opportunity for team members to really give voice to one another. And then along with that, I would say one thing we're seeing with technology is the chance to like raise hands has actually been interesting to watch because we're seeing like this deference for each other, this respect for one another in terms of the raised hand. Oh, this person has their hand up. What would you like to say? And really seeing each other invite people into the conversation, which is maybe not what I would have seen, 2 years ago is like really this respect for people's hands are up. How do we get people's voices into the room? So that's just one example of how we're seeing a technology really interacting or at play within the teams. What else would you add, Alexander?
Yeah, so I would add the other side of it, which is the virtual environment also allows people to hide. So one of the things that we're noticing is that the on-off video is a feature by where people can disengage for whatever reason from a conversation or depart and come back. Whereas I think in prior times when you were in a meeting room, it would have been hard to disengage at such a level. And the other part about chat that's interesting is that there's the subtext chat, the chat that's happening between members that is not seen. And those conversations are not known. And it'd be interesting to know what those are. Some of those would be really important to surface, yet they're in a subterranean environment and not for the benefit of all. Now, some would say that that's helpful because it allows an exchange to happen between sub-members. But as if some of those conversations could surface, it might be helpful to really understand what's on people's minds. Another part of technology, which is more recent, which is really helping, is what we're calling virtual collaborative platforms, Claudia. And these technologies, and there are many, there's over 40 that we know of, like Miro and Mural and Idea Boards or Jamboard, Concept Board, Padlet, Thought Exchange, you name it. These technologies will help teams and their facilitators work through sort of multi-step collaborative activities online. So a team can descend upon such a collaborative platform and all of a sudden, guess what? They're doing real work together. It can support, online sticky note creation, anonymous contributions, idea ranking, affinity grouping. And when teams are able to do that, they move away from just the idea sharing or information sharing and brainstorming into actual problem solving. And that type of problem solving and work product creation moves the working group back into team formation, because in our mind, we see teams as being, a collection of individuals who are bound by a common purpose and shared goals, doing real work together, interdependent work together, solving problems, making decisions, and creating work products. That's greatly facilitated by these new technologies.
So from what I'm getting there is basically the tech that can help the team work more as a team. And so you've mentioned here a great technology for problem solving and for really getting work done. Is there any technology that you can refer to for the relationship side of the team?
I would say I've been using collaborative platforms, as Alexander talked about, not just for task-related teamwork, but also have really found some creative ways of using it to help our clients get to know one another, to go deeper. So for example, I use Video Ask. That's one of the platforms that I've been using with teams. And with Video Ask, the questions that I had this particular team I'm thinking about was to share more about who you are, share more about what your hopes and dreams are for the team that you're working with. And so everyone recorded themselves on Video Ask, which is a really easy platform to use. It allows people to auto record. And then we had everyone on the team like watch each other's video, right? And then make comments about it. So that's a creative way that we're using these same types of collaborative tools and being creative in how we're having people do some asynchronous work offline, be able to learn more about each other offline, and then bring that all back together in the sessions that we have with them.
Super. I can imagine that it's fun and it's also a way of getting them engaged. Do you have any more examples that you can give to the audience of ways in which you have used the technology available as a coach to help them either on focusing on the task or on the relationship?
I use something similar to Kimberley using Miro board, which is a collaborative platform. There was an exercise that we call 3 pictures, and each team member was required to bring in 3 pictures that were meaningful to their lives. And we posted those on the Miro board. And each person had an opportunity to describe what the 3 pictures meant to them. And it was usually we do it, in a room on screen. But in this particular case, we were able to do it on the Miro board, and allowed for a real clear visual across all the team members of these 3 pictures. and created a deeper sense of understanding and knowing each other. So that's just another way of doing it.
Right. And I have one more to add, which is I have found in this environment that we have actually been using graphic recorders more because, are you familiar with graphic recorders?
Can you explain it to the listeners so that all of them know about it?
Yeah, sure. So graphic recorders they are fantastic artists, fantastic human beings who are basically recording with imagery and some words, imagery mostly, the conversation that is at hand while the conversation is happening, right? While the work is happening or whatever the nature of, the dialogue is. So they are recording. And the way that we've been using this over the past year and a half is having a graphic recorder come into our virtual sessions, have that person set up their iPad that they're drawing on, or their tablet that they're drawing on, and have them do visual recording. And so that becomes like another window, if you will, in Zoom or whatever technology you're using. And what I really have loved about using this as a mechanism as we've been in virtual is because so much of the team's interaction is through, our heads. And it's a lot of talking and talking and talking about it. That what we found is when we're doing sessions with the team, having that graphic recorder there just brings in another entryway into the subtext of what's happening within the team, which has been, as that, there's deeper levels that you can get to as human beings when we connect with imagery, when we connect with vision. And the graphic recorders, they have this really great gift of listening to the words that are being said and listening to the things underneath the surface. And we found that then by having a team react to the visuals that have been produced, then that creates a whole nother dialogue about ourselves as team in process with one another. So that's been an interesting thing that we've been doing more over the past year and a half or so.
Another example to build on that one, or actually slightly differently, when you have access to a simple concept like a sticky note or a Post-it note, Claudia, you can have individuals write down what they believe or what they feel about a certain topic. And in a room, when you have a whole series of notes of what you like, what you don't like, what pro and con, what you're concerned about, what you're fearful about, what you're leaning into, or what you like, it's helpful to have different conversations that are more general. On these collaborative platforms, you can do just that. You can have anonymized Post-it notes, which allow individuals to say exactly what they need to say about a certain topic in a way that they feel safe and protected, for which you can then create little groupings of ideas and have group and team conversations. So it does facilitate the delivery of real messages, if you will, an anonymous format, which does create that ability to engage in real teamwork versus just talking about it.
I guess what you guys are describing is a lot of playfulness and a lot of resources out there that can be used by the coaches in a team environment. Is there a place that or a way in which you recommend coaches to go about finding out about these technologies?
I think the simplest avenue is just to go online, to queue in collaborative platforms, virtual collaborative platforms, and the names that I shared will come up. There are many others. We found over 40 that exist today that provide very similar services. So I would just go online, type in virtual collaborative platform and see what shows up. And I think there you'll get a chance to explore them and see what they do and give them test runs. They do different things. Some are more complicated than others, we'll say. Some are simpler than others. And every client has their own affinity for that level of complexity or complicatedness.
Yeah, there's also, I guess, some that the client are working with and are already familiar with. Any that you find are the most common ones that clients are already using and coaches can then take advantage of?
Yeah, so what we have seen, Claudia, over this move to virtual is that our clients have really gravitated towards the big names as it relates to, they all have some type of video platform, whatever their flavor is, they all have some type of video platform. Most of them have some type of collaborative feature that they are using, whether it be a Miro board, whether it be a Jamboard, or Microsoft, if you're using Teams, they have a whiteboard collaboration type of feature as well. And then I would say the more creative means of how to use technology, I think that has been where it's been a value add for me as a coach to bring in other types of ways of using something, right? So for example, the thing with the videos, none of my clients have actually seen that or used that or thought. And I think, maybe it has something to do with this fact that they are really using the technology for the sake of let's get our work done. Right. And then this is where we come in and bring some more, we're almost role modeling, if you will, some ways to expound how they are working together within the virtual platforms.
So great. So that's a great summary of how the technology has impacted the team. Can you now tell us more about, as a coach, how the technology has impacted?
So yes, definitely. That's a great question. In our coaching work, we divide the work that we do up into two fundamental pieces, what we call sensing and what we call making moves. A big part of a team coach's job is to gather information in real time as the team is doing its real work, and to gather information around the patterns that we're seeing around their behaviors, their feelings, and their ways of working. That's a fundamental job of a team coach. And once we've gathered that data, it's to every once in a while jump in and either share the data that we're noticing with the client team to see how they react and what they want to do with it, or ask them what they're noticing about their own patterns. That's an easy way to talk about what we do. Prior to the collaborative platforms, we were fundamentally just observing conversations without the benefit of the full body language and the full meeting dynamics and the full interaction dynamics that we would get in a setting. So we were limited in our ability to really watch problem solving and interaction in action. And it limited us then to being able to gather less data or a different type of data. Since the collaborative platforms have emerged, we've been able then to watch the team work together, come together to solve problems, come together to make decisions, come together to create collective work products. And that's given us a window into how they're actually operating together as a team, which wasn't available to us in the very beginning until we found these platforms. And that's helpful because when a team starts to work together, you really start to get a sense for those interpersonal dynamics and for a sense of how they're actually relating to the topics at hand versus just conversations on a virtual screen where 8 to 9 people are just talking with each other. You can't quite get the full sense of their teamwork beyond, again, idea sharing and brainstorming.
Yeah, so I will build on this idea of sensing in that by the fact that we are more virtual now and we have the access to be able to observe the team. One of the things that we've heard consistently from the coaches that we've talked to about how their work has shifted and changed by team coaching virtually, one of the things is that we're hearing it enables actually the coaches to sense more deeply within the teams because, right, they can go off camera. We can go off camera as coaches and really do the work of observing all the faces that are here, right? We've heard from our coach colleagues and seen that, we can sense more around facial expressions. Like, ooh, that was a raised eyebrow. I wonder what that meant. Right? Or that person is, scrunching their nose every time this person speaks. Because we can go off camera, right? We can have all of our sensing charts that are before us. We're able to go deeper. We're able to really look and study people. Whereas if we were in person doing that, that would kind of be creepy if we were going deep and studying people's faces. But by nature of these platforms and being virtual, it's also given us this ability to really see patterns emerge, to really study people on the team as we're doing our sensing work. We are missing this piece around seeing the rest of the body, right? So we're missing some somatic factors, somatic features that we can read. We like to talk about this concept of geometries and being able to see where people are sitting, how they are, how power and influence starts to show up in the interactions that happen. However, I will say you can start to sense some of that in how people are interacting virtually. It looks different, right? So it's caused us to hone a different sensing muscle, if you will, through this platform.
So you've mentioned basically how it has changed in some way, the way you do the work. And I guess the question here is, has there been a feeling that the fact that you doing it online versus doing it in person has some kind of disadvantage or limitation that is significant and that needs to be taken into account?
So the one thing that came up with the team coaches we interviewed was very consistent. When it comes to sensing, as Kimberly said, we do have the ability to go deeper, to observe more, and with collaborative platforms to see even more. So that's available to us in our sensing. When it comes to jumping in and making, quote, interventions, which we call, affectionately, we call that making moves, right? Which is you're in the middle of a meeting, you're 20 minutes in and you say, may I jump in for a moment and share with you what I'm noticing, or may I ask you a question? Those type of moves were a lot easier to make in real meeting rooms. What we're finding is a couple of things. Coaches are a bit more reticent to jump in than they used to be. And many times they're waiting till the end of the meeting to provide feedback on the overall meeting. So the in-the-moment move making has been substituted with either not making a move or waiting till the end. And the reasons for that are really threefold. First, to make moves and to jump into a team, there's a lot of rapport building that needs to happen. You need to have the right level of rapport. You have to have the right level of cohesion with the team itself as a team coach. And because you're not in person, some of that relationship building isn't happening at a sufficient level. The second factor is that the agendas are packed. So there's very little wiggle room to jump in. And so we're waiting to actually have a time scheduled on the meeting to give the feedback versus having time to jump in, because every time we jump in and make a move, it takes time to debrief it. And the third is the technology is a little bit inhibiting. Either you have to raise your hand, or you have to wait in line, or you have to jump in. It's not as easy as being in a meeting room and just leaning in and saying, can I jump in here? The technology feels a little bit more challenging in its fluidity for us to be able to just do what we need to do.
So based on that, what advice would you give coaches?
Yeah, so I would say the first thing that immediately popped to my mind is that I have found it even more critical to have alignment meetings with the leader as I'm doing this work. So in our methodology of team coaching, we also have alignment meetings that are happening with the team leader outside of work with the team, and we're also having coaching sessions with the leader in relationship to them as leader of their team. And I have found, Claudia, that having those alignment meetings and having that coaching opportunity with the leader has been critical, because I've lost space, if you will, to make as moves within the team. So that relationship with the leader and really working with the leader to help that person lead their team has become so critical. So that's one thing I would say is that is a must in doing this work.
Another thing you can do is take advantage of the chat box. The chat is a very active environment for exchange. You can actually make a move in the chat box. You can share data or ask a question in the chat box and see if they pick it up. So it's a place where you can actually play. So that's another thing that you can do. And having done so, I've seen a couple of times where someone will say, wait a minute, Alexander just asked us a question. Can we focus on that for a moment? And I just put it in the chat. Or I'll share some data and someone will say, hey, Alexander just shared some interesting data here. Can we process it for a second? So that's something you can do. The other thing you can do is also via text, if you have the relationship with the leader, is to do texting with the leader to share moves with them as they're actually leading the meeting. So it's a private avenue to do in-the-moment coaching with that individual. And if other individuals have agreed to, you can also provide different individuals with feedback as you go. So we do have that avenue now today, either through the private chat or through text.
So basically, you give them the ball, you throw the ball to them and let them be the ones making the decision and making the actual move that you would have done.
Yeah, the other thing that I would just add is being planful. It feels like more planning, more structure ahead of time as to, this is where we're coming in on the meeting. Like we'll save 20 minutes at the end of the agenda for you to do your coaching thing, Kimberly. right? So really becoming coordinated with the owners of the meetings, because again, like packed agendas, trying to get through a lot. So that has become critical for us too. It's making sure we're really coordinated about when we're going to be on agenda.
And another thing you can do is, we oftentimes advise that when we're when we're really involved in team coaching, which again is this art of sensing and making moves, when an agenda is put together, and let's say they put an hour for a topic or a half hour for a topic, we actually ask our clients to increase that time by 50%. So a half hour session is 45 minutes, an hour is 90 minutes. Why? Because when you jump in and make a move, the team is probably going to want to process it, talk about it, discuss it, and move it towards some form of resolution. In the virtual environment, you really need to emphasize that. You really need to make sure that they add extra time so that the processing can take place. And then on top of that, let them know that you are going to be making moves, that there are times when you're going to be jumping in, and it may feel interruptive, but set them up to understand it. Give them a couple of examples so they know when it's coming that that's what you're doing. And if the extra time has been allotted, then you really do have an abundance of time to make your moves during the meeting and not have to wait till the end, or a specific prescribed time by which you're giving feedback.
Yeah, so that importance of contracting with them and really setting out everything from the start so that they know what to expect. So you mentioned that teams have packed agendas. Some of our listeners are also companies. Are there any technologies that you would recommend the companies to look at in terms of helping their teams?
And these technologies are plentiful as well, just like the collaborative platforms. And there's really three types. There's what we would call the technologies that help you capture meeting minutes and meeting notes, which are very helpful. There are technologies that help improve your meetings through artificial intelligence and natural language processing, etc. Then there's some technologies that help you actually keep track of how your meetings are going as they're going. I'll give you a couple of names for each of those that might be of interest to the listeners. On the meeting minutes, you have Acta, Fireflies.ai, Hendrix, MeetGeek, Otter.ai, and WordCab. All of these will help you make your meetings more productive by actually automating your meeting minutes and your meeting notes. In terms of meeting improvement, making your meetings better, you would have Meeting Magpie, Meeting Quality, Meeting Science, Rate My Meeting, and ROTI Express, ROTI.express. Those technologies actually have AI built within them that help you make improvements to your meetings. And finally, an interesting set of technologies which are more about keeping track of how the conversations are running to there. One is Riff Analytics, which we've used, which keeps a running track of how much people speak, how many times they speak, and the percentage of the total time that they speak. And then Gender Tally App, which focuses itself on more gender differences and tallying the number of times and the percentage of time that different genders speak within meetings. So those are just some. There's a lot more of that that's going to be coming down the pipeline, and they're very helpful, and they'll help you both capture your meeting minutes, make meeting improvements, but also keep track of how you're running your meetings.
Everything that you've now learned from how to deal with the virtual environment and how to do the coaching in the virtual environment, and from what you're describing, it has brought quite a lot of change in the way you do things. Has there been anything now where you're going back to face-to-face that you say, oh, this was really useful in my virtual environment, I'm going to start doing this as well in the face-to-face?
Yeah, the one that comes to mind for me, because so recently I've been asked back into the room. So this is an emerging trend, and it's off and on because of what's happening with the pandemic, of course. But in the meetings that I've gone back to, I've had them remember what it was like to be in a virtual environment where what Kimberley was saying, where the participation was more even and balanced, and where the raising hand function actually allowed for people to get a chance to speak without being interrupted. So one of the behaviors we notice and observe is interruptions. And what I've noticed is that the interruption level has gone down. And it's important to remember that, and just to remind people that there was a time when in the virtual world, you were actually taking turns and you were reaching out to each other for those that were more quiet. Don't forget to do that. it's valid even though you're in person. It doesn't go away because you're no longer virtual. So that's one that comes to mind pretty immediately.
Two things. One is what I have loved about being in virtual environment is really seeing team members work together collaboratively in breakout groups, maybe with people that they would not have worked with before so closely, right? So there's been this ability for team members to feather together, right? To go off and talk to one another real time, like in the middle of what is happening of their work, right? Because maybe they've designed it to do that. And so for me, as I think about going back, like that's a piece that I hope will continue is coming back and being able to create the space when we are together for the team to really mix it up, right? Not just be, we come, we stay in our corners of the room, and maybe talk about like our one or two things that we came to talk about, but how do you create that space as a team for you to get that experience of, you know what, we were randomly assigned 3 people in a breakout group, so we're gonna, keep that. Then the second thing that my hope is, one thing we bring back is really the learnings that have been gained from the asynchronous work offline, and then really coming together to maximize the time together in quote unquote doing the work. So doing the brainstorming, doing the thinking offline, doing the population of ideation, doing the review offline. And I feel like I've seen, at least the teams I work with, really become more disciplined about when we're together, we really need to maximize this time together. So let's do all the stuff that we can do offline, right? So that's my 2 hopes of what comes back.
I'll add another one, which is sort of a derivative, which is what's been missing in the virtual environment has been those informal touch points. Now, it's true that teams will say, I have one-on-ones with every team member every week or every month, and we have these one-on-one meetings, and these one-on-one meetings help us to coordinate what we're doing together. But there is really something to say, and there's a lot to say about what I would call the informal touch point, the coffee chat, the water cooler conversation, having lunch together, stop by my office and we'll talk about it. Can I stop by your cubicle to have a conversation? Those touch points grease the skids of the informal information network, and it's very important. So even though we're trying to do it through these one-on-ones virtually, it's not the same thing. So the derivative is to say, go back to doing that. Because one client told me something really interesting, which was, we've gone back into our offices, but we're staying in our offices. We're not actually, we're like living a virtual world in real life because we've been so used to being siloed. So it's the idea of get out of your office, don't send an email, go talk, don't just text or try to get on a Zoom call with somebody on another floor. Actually get up, go have the conversation, do the touch point, have lunch, have coffee, stop by their office, and get that whole informal network operating once again, because it's essential to good teamwork. I found that fascinating, actually.
Okay, so Alexander, I do have to jump in and just say, like, my add to that is what one of the things we're seeing with our clients, right, is they are coming back not 100%. Right. So they are giving people the opportunity to come. Maybe some people stay virtual. Maybe they're in the office. So this whole need for hybrid and how do we team together in a hybrid world becomes really interesting. Right. And then how do we team coach when we're working with a team that is part of the people are in the room, part of the people are still at home, and yet we are showing up to do team coaching. So there's this piece of, yes, come out of your offices, and how do we deal with when there's this, hybrid situation? And so, Claudia, going back to your question of like, what do we hope remains? One thing that I definitely do hope remains is how do, like, all of the lessons that people have learned on how to integrate technology and use it to really bring those that are remote into the team. Because I think before this, right, if you were remotely working, you were like not the cool kid. You were on the outside, right? And so as we start to come back, how do we really integrate the two skills together and not just, we're all 100% virtual, we're all 100% in person. Well, really, you're not, right? Remember, you have some people who are still working from home. So how do we really learn this dance now with each other?
Yeah, so I guess that brings us to another challenge, which is the fact that now some will be working from home, others will be working from the office. And I guess to your point, Alexander, it's like maximize those days that you're in the office and don't stay in your cubicle, as in try and use everything that is to the benefit of being in the same place. And then on the days that you're home, I guess be on your cubicle, so to say. But then that again now brings what you're bringing, Kimberly, is a whole different thing, which is the fact that some will be at the office, others will be at home. Ideally, some days they'll be all together in the office. So basically, I guess, have you seen anything in relation to this hybrid world that might help the listeners?
Okay, so I'm going to sound like I am such a fan, because I am a fan of OWL, OWL, like their technology that they have around what they've created is like this microphone and camera that spins around 360 automatically based on, who's looking, who's speaking, where are you? So like technology like that, I feel is going like companies, organizations, teams are going to have to invest in really the technology to support this hybrid piece. And even as team coach, right, as I'm coming in and working with the team, like that makes it so much more effective for me to coach the team and work with the team when we have the technology that allows me to really get a sense for everyone, not just the people that are sitting right before me. So I love OWL. I've even played with the idea of, do we just buy one and do we just send it to all the clients that we're going to work with so that they're able to like really have an effective environment? And I'm sure there's other technology that does that. But my point being, really investing in the technology to make everyone feel as if they are in the same space, regardless of whether or not they are in the same space, so that we don't go back to this in-group, out-group of, the people who are present are the in-group, and then the people who are not present are the afterthoughts or out-group.
So that sense of inclusion and having everybody have a voice and be present. And I guess in this age, in this year, or we've been working towards inclusion. So this is a new type of inclusion that we need to consider.
And we've all had the experience of being in a meeting room when some folks are in the room, some folks are on screen, and some folks are on phone. And we forget about the folks who are on the phone. We forget to ask how they're doing, and then it's sort of an afterthought. Oh, Sally or John, what do you think? But they've been silent for a majority of the work session. Same thing with people on screen. We'll forget about them, especially if they drop off screen. So I love what Kimberly's saying. And the technology is going to improve and keep us aware of that and make it more inclusive for sure.
So I guess as a coach, it's if you're in the room to make sure that gets addressed, and if you're working with a leader to also make sure that they address this. Anything else that they need to take into account?
One other thing to maybe consider is like, when do you maximize your time together in person? And when are those times that, it makes sense for everyone to be virtual, to go back to the virtual environment? So that's one thing that one of my colleagues, Ray Ringel, who is like a master facilitator, has really challenged me to think about is, when are those times of high complexity within a team? When are those times of really high relationship, emotional types of context? And then those are the times where, it's really helpful for everyone to be in the room. And when are those times where maybe it's less risky, maybe it's less emotional relationship type of work that you're doing? And then as team coach or working with the team in other modalities, like then how can we actually take advantage of the virtual environment? So that is something that is like factoring into my mind as I'm thinking about moving back to in person, and the work that I do with clients is really asking that question, like, what's your outcome? What are your goals? Taking into consideration the dynamics that's happening within a team, and then making a decision around, those choice points around, do we come together? Is it hybrid? Or maybe actually it'll be better for the work that you all need to do and my interaction with you for all of us to be remote.
So working with the client on that design of the engagement.
It's funny because that's exactly where I was going to go. And I was going to put a bit of a of a very similar but slightly different twist on it is, come together in person when the work is strategic and visionary. When it's really strategic work, when it's visionary work, then that's when you bring people together if it's a hybrid situation. When it's more operational and tactical, you can resort to the virtual environment. You don't need to be together for that work. You can even do subgrouping, as Kimberly said, or one-on-ones or sub-teaming. But really for the important work, and understand what that important work is, where you're producing a collective work product, where you're creating a strategic product, when you have to have a collective decision, where you're really involved in the very important meaning-making conversation. Come together, because the in-person is going to drive the relationship aspect, which will make that work even more powerful. So that's just my add to build on what Kimberly said.
Where do you see the future of team coaching going?
Alexander, I would actually invite you to talk about, I have thoughts, but I'd love for you to talk about this because I love how you just are really seeing the vision of the need for more team coaches and really shifting from one-on-one coaching to really more systemic impact within organizations and the power that team coaching can really bring to that.
Yeah, the vision for team coaching for us began over 25 years ago, as an insight that teams needed to move away from the traditional team building and team facilitation and team consulting work, where they were always dependent upon an external person, to actually team coaching, where the team coach allows the team to be dependent upon itself. That insight was born many, many years ago. Since then, the field has grown tremendously. Team coaching used to be a fairly nascent and unknown. Today, most organizations know what team coaching is and are making requests for it. The need for team coaches is here. It's here to stay, and it's here to grow. The ICF, I think over the past 2 or 3 years, has named team coaching as the second fastest growing niche in the coaching disciplines. We know that they've now have a set of team coaching competencies that I was actually had a privilege to work on, team coaching competency set, and the first accreditation programs through the ICF to actually get an ICF team coaching accreditation. There are plenty of team coaching certificate programs that have blossomed and have popped up, and the need is there. So we see a future that is rich. We see a future that is abundant, where we're going to need a lot more team coaches in the world, and we're going to need team coaches that specialize in all kinds of teams: virtual teams, reconfigurable teams, multinational teams, diverse teams, management teams, executive teams, you name it. There's going to be a real sense of diversity in the types of teams we work with. So we're pretty bullish, and we're here for the ride.
Yeah, I love that. And one additional thought to leave with is seeing the need for more diversity, equity, inclusion work, and integrating that into not just, we talked a lot about task and relationship, but also this piece around inclusion, inclusive teaming, equity within teams, and being able to coach that, as well as the task and the relationship aspects that we have focused on in the past.
Thank you so much for that and for everything that you've mentioned so far. This is so useful and eye-opening. Some final questions for you would be, where can our listeners find out more or get in touch with you?
Yeah, thank you, Claudia. So 4 ways. One is through our website, Corentus.com. A lot of information there to be read and to be taken. 2, to reach for us at engageus@Corentus.com. We're always looking for ways to engage with folks. 3rd is we have a YouTube channel called Corentus. There's quite a few videos there that talk about who we are and what we do. And finally, our LinkedIn channel, Corentus. All 4 are valid, and we'll be able to receive your messages and engage with you. Thank you.
And these ones are more relaxed questions. What book did you read last year that you enjoyed, both professional and non-professional?
Okay, so I'll go first. So professional book is, and it's right here on my bookshelf, Navigating Polarities by Brian Emerson and Kimberley Lewis. So I am going deeper into the work of tensions, polarities, and how those show up in helping leaders and teams really shift from either or thinking to both and thinking. And I have found that this is a skill set that leaders and teams have increasingly need to be capable of shifting to both and thinking. So I've read this book probably 2 times, 3 times last year. And then the for fun book that I have read has actually been a series with my 6-year-old. We do read alouds, and it has been the Nocturnals series, which is about animals who become like, they are nocturnal animals and they save the day and save the forest that they're living within. So it has been really fun with my son, and we've actually read through the series twice now.
I'll take that one. I have long rides to school, so that will be useful.
My one book that I'll talk about is Social Intelligence by Daniel Goleman. That's the book that I've been diving into with a lot of passion. He calls it the revolutionary new science of human relationships, beyond IQ, beyond emotional intelligence. And it's just an amazing book, which it's really about the neuroanatomy of our relationships and how we relate to each other. And that's been both my personal and my professional book, which says a lot.
Thank you. And then the other one is, can you tell us about 3 things that are around you that say something about you?
So 3 things that are around me. One is, I don't know if you can see the big painting that's on the back of my wall, but that's actually artwork that my son did. And so that is like super significant and probably could count for all 3 of my things, which is really the blessing and the joy that my son is. And he keeps me on my toes. He keeps me curious. He actually helps me to bring joy, reminds me to bring joy into the work that I'm doing with leaders, with organizations. He helps me to really walk in this polarity of take seriously my work and hold lightly to my work. So I'm actually going to say that's my one piece that counts for, it's a multiplier effect for me.
For the listeners, it's very colorful with yellow and green and red and black, and I think that's purple and lots of circles. And I actually commented on how colorful it was and energy and how much energy brought to the room. So he's an amazing artist.
Thank you.
3 items. So the first item I have is behind me. It's a little plaque that my daughters gave me.
Best papa ever.
Yeah, I'm the father of 3 daughters, and for me, being a father is one of the greatest privileges of my life. I take that privilege very seriously. I love my girls. They're Chloe, Leanna, and Alexia, 29, 21, and 18. It's just been an amazing journey. So that's my number one item. It's always behind me. I see it every morning when I come into the office, and it's always right there behind my head, so I know it exists. Second object is a candle. I keep a candle lit throughout the day. It's just something that I like to do. There's always a candle burning here. It's a bit of warmth and just more of an organic, real feeling that I like to have near me. I don't know. It's something that I've been doing for years. And my third item is actually, believe it or not, it's my to-do list. I have a really interesting way to organize the work that I do, and I've been perfecting it for years, and it's a great way to keep me on track and on target with what I do. And I think it's really productive, and it helps me perform, and it helps me stay on track of things. And it's an important item. It's always right there on my desk, and I use it all day long. So I had to say that, like, yeah, that's there, that's real.
You almost tempted me to go deeper into, how you've perfected it, to see if there are any to compare and improve, so to say. Well, thank you so much for that. And it was lovely to have you with us today, giving us all this insight on team coaching.
Great. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. It's been fun.
So thank you for listening to another episode by the Association for Coaching. I have been Claudia Day. Our purpose is to help coaches in the process of navigating the new technologies that are arising in this field. If you would like to find out more, please follow us on LinkedIn or explore our webpage at theassociationforcoaching.com. There you can keep up to date with our latest episodes and conversations, as well as our digital learning calendar.